All right, what up, y'all? This video is a talk that Dr. Michelle Payne gave to me and my team recently last season. If you guys don't remember, I interviewed her about a couple months back on that podcast I did. She told me to record this video and to actually upload it because she thought it would help out the whole NA scene in general. It definitely helped us out as a team, just understanding each other. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe, check out Michelle's channel, and let me know what you guys think of this video. Enjoy.
All right, so I want to take you through a little bit of a history of the arousal and performance research. And even though it sounds really dry, you'll get to the end of it and you'll say, oh, that all makes sense to me. So that's what we're planning for today. So if you have a look at the screen, we're looking at the inverted U hypothesis. If you've ever played sport before, probably you might have had a coach who has said to you or told you about the inverted U. Have you ever played sport and had a coach like that?
No. I've seen this
Anybody?
before.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. All right, so how it works, so let's have a look at the axes. So on the y-axis, we've got performance, and on the x-axis, we've got arousal. And it's in this inverted U-shape relationship between those two variables. So on the left-hand side of the model here, when arousal is low, so we're thinking about how hyped up you are, remember? So if that's really low, like you're asleep at the time, clearly performance is not going to be that great. But as you become more and more wakeful, so arousal is increasing, as you become more wakeful, your performance starts to increase. And it gets to a certain point at the middle here, like at the top of the rainbow, where performance is at its best. So if we draw a line across to the y-axis, that's the best performance here at the top of the rainbow. But you'll notice that as arousal levels continue to increase, what happens is our performance starts to drop off. This is where we start getting into thoughts of I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling stressed. And so performance drops off a little bit. And as we get more and more stressed, then we might tilt in a major way, or worst case scenario, we might actually be panicking because things really aren't going well for us and our performance has dropped right off at that point. So it's a really intuitive sort of model. A lot of coaches love it because it's quite easy to understand. Have you experienced this sort of idea yourselves, that where you know your best performance is up here, and you know for yourself that too much is going to make your performance reduce?
Yeah.
You experienced that before?
100%.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we're talking about best performance being at the top, I want you to notice that a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right, performance isn't really dropping off a whole lot. In fact, it's quite a wide range where performance is still pretty good, even though it's not perfect. And so this bit at the top here is like the zone of optimal functioning is what it's called. And if you think about, okay, well, what arousal level is associated with your best performance, it's quite a wide range here of, you don't have to be exactly spot on. If you get to sort of near enough, that's probably pretty good enough for your good performance. So zone of optimal functioning. So you've heard probably athletes talking about being in the zone or being in a purple patch. They're talking about this, ability to be able to put themselves in the right frame of mind in order for them to perform at their best. So everyone got a handle on this one? Anyone want to ask any questions?
I have a comment. I've heard
Yeah, go ahead.
that this also happens too, even with like positive emotions and stuff too. Like you get like winner's tilt, where it's like it's the same thing. Like
absolutely
get aroused from like good
So-
round wins, and you can also just end up falling out.
Excitement also. So we're down here. Excitement and stress both having the same effect. And what's happening with excitement is that as soon as something great happens, you suddenly get distracted. You're thinking about, oh, I'm going to win this, or other things that don't, aren't helpful to performance, and performance will drop off because you're not paying attention to the right things. So yeah, excitement can absolutely affect you in the same way. Anything else? I want you to notice at the top here, Yerkes and Dodson were the guys who first published this research, 1908. And actually, it's based on mice. It's mice running a maze. And it's astounding to me to think that human performance can be described by a study on mice.
Yeah.
So when mice were sort of encouraged to run a maze, how fast they could run a maze, when they were unmotivated, they were not performing well. When they were suitably motivated by food, for instance, then they ran their maze quite well. But as soon as they get overhyped up, then their decision making was out the window and they couldn't concentrate at all. So I found it very interesting. Anyway, so let's move on from this one if everyone's happy.
Yep.
Let's have a look now at number 2. So this is like moving on now from a single inverted U hypothesis. This guy, Hannon, decided, okay, well, not everyone fits on this average single inverted U. What we can do is describe it by saying everyone has their own inverted U, and if we put them all on a graph, they'd all sort of be in a line. Well, some of them can be much closer than this, of course, because there's going to be millions of them. But if we're just doing this for descriptive purposes, I want to show you performance is still on the y-axis, arousal is still on the x-axis. We're measuring how different people might respond to the same stimuli. So person A is someone, if we look at best performance, so we're drawing a line from the y-axis across, everyone's performing at the same rate, but what's different between them is that if we drop a perpendicular from their highest point, person A performs at their best at a lower level, a lower arousal level than for person B and for person C. So person C is someone who likes to be really hyped up. They need to be hyped up in order for them to perform at their best. Whereas if someone who's a person A type, they've got to be really careful that they're not overhyped up because that will make them perform worse. So does this make sense to everybody that on our team even, there are probably people who prefer to be more hyped up or less hyped up than others? So can you work out on your team where you think each of you sits? Who's at the hyped end and who's at the lower hyped end?
Josh, you think you're a hype guy? You think you need hype?
I think I'm between the blue and the white one, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Sam, you also are like that.
I was about to
actually.
say, around there.
I think Trevor likes to get. He doesn't seem to think he's like that, but I think he also is like that. He performs better when he's hyped up. You know what I mean? Like he gets like a 2K and he's like, yeah. I think like Andrew and Eli maybe are like between orange and yellow, somewhere in there.
Orange and yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah, what colors are you seeing? Bro? You gotta turn the original vibrance
I know what you
down.
mean. I know what you mean.
Oh, white and orange, my bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So usually on a team, you're not going to get 5 people exactly the same. You're going to get some variation between them. Is what I wanted to know. And so on the basis of that, it's really important to understand, okay, well, what level of arousal do we want to bring? What level of energy do we want to bring for the team? Because if you think of the team having its own entity, like its own body almost, but contributed to by 5 members of the team who are talking, the comms have its own energy. And you've heard me talking about energy being too high or energy being too low. That's really what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So is everyone okay with this particular concept where everyone has their own individual inverted U, and you need to work out, okay, well, where do you think you might sit to know, and for your teammates to know, okay, well, is this too high or too low for you?
Yeah,
We'll
Andrew,
get to that in a
Andrew and
minute,
Eli,
but,
do you guys agree with what we're saying? Like you're between yellow and white?
Yeah, definitely say I'm on the lower end.
Okay.
I think I'm more in the middle. Like I think it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard for me to self-evaluate this, but I think you guys also may conflate my like lower energy in the comms to me being on that lower end. But I do find there's like a pretty good sweet spot for me where I'm like really into it and I perform the best. But then I think
it's a matter of... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm not sure of the specifics of how you would like I don't know, like subsets of
Work it
arousal.
out.
If you consider like stress versus excitement, I don't know if that plays into it differently, but I feel like those levels aren't super comparable. So I don't know. Is my answer. I don't know.
The way you work out or you think over, okay, well, what does my best performance look like, or what does the energy level look like? If you think back over your past history of when you played really fantastic games, that's the best clue for you to work out, okay, well, that's the sort of energy level I want to try and aim for. And you just keep working, just keep trying to hit that right pitch for you. And if it's not quite right, then you just adjust it. You would have a feel for what works best for you based on your past experience.
All right, after you say that, like, what was the best game? I think I'm a blue. I think I'm a full-blown blue. Like, when I think back to, like, the games I play the best.
Coming out as blue.
Yeah, I'm coming out as blue.
I think you are too, Sam.
Yeah.
More so than anyone else in the team, because I've heard you in comms and scrims.
Yeah.
And your energy levels are the highest of the team, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm
Anyway,
a blue.
all
I'm a
right, so
Smurf.
let's
Andrew's the
let's move on to the next one. Okay, so this is now me trying to imagine. This is me working out a team that I worked on in 2020. One of my first teams, and this is where I first was developing this idea. And so I've got 5 coloured inverted U's here, and I've got this dotted one here. I just want to talk about briefly. This is me. So this is where I think I sit. I'm at the low end for sure. And I've included me here for the moment to say that it's there for me to remind myself of the bias that I bring, because as you know, I've spoken to you about how I'm always looking for, okay, is what you're doing helping or hindering your performance? And if I'm thinking, okay, these comms are a little bit too low, they're not energetic enough, then I have to weigh up, okay, is it because, oh, sorry, I want to say the other way around. If the comms are too energetic, for me, they're not good because they're on over this side, but maybe for the team, it is good. And so I have to think, okay, well, before I say to everyone, okay, it's too high, let's get the energy down a little bit lower, I have to think, okay, how is it affecting our performance? That's the only judgment I want to make about it. And so if it's good for performance, I'm going to let it keep going. But if I think it's affecting our performance, I'm going to say, okay, let's wind them back a little bit. They're a bit too high at the moment. Or sometimes in scrims, you've heard me say, let's get our energy levels up a little bit. It's because I think your performance is on the lower side because the energy level is a bit too low. So it's always, for me, a judgment about, okay, how does this fit with your best performance? And that's why I've got my bias on display here. But let's take me out of the picture now. So here I've got an example. I've got 5 players. It's a Counter-Strike team. And not that matters at all, but this is vaguely how I imagine how close everyone is together. So even though these are quite different individuals, they're sort of quite close together. So the green and the dark yellow have a high point around about A as their best performance, and the the blue and the light yellow are at the upper end, and position B sort of is about where their best performance is, and the purple guy is somewhere in the middle. Now, if we're thinking of this as being like an entity of its own, and the team having its own energy, we want to try and pitch our comms energy to about where C is. And the reason for that is that C, well, apart from being great for the purple guy, it's not too high for the dark yellow and the green. It's still sort of up there, a little bit to the right, but it's still okay. It's still okay for them. And for the light yellow and the blue team, C is a little bit to the left for their best, but it's still good for the whole team. It's for the benefit of the team. We want to pitch our comms energy at about where C is. Does everyone understand that idea? So that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
And so let's imagine Sam is dead. And who was another high person? Again, I've forgotten his head.
Josh.
Me.
Yeah, let's say Sam and Josh are dead. and we've got the 3 others down here. We could probably move point C to a little bit lower if we wanted to, because the high energy people are dead and we don't need them anymore. Sorry to say that. So it depends on who's alive as to how much energy you want to bring in the end round. So I'm thinking now, so imagine like the gunfight's going on, bombs being planted, we've got like a 2v2 or maybe a 2v4 even. Lots going on. The energy level has to be right, because if we're too hyped up, for these guys at the lower end, they're going to make mistakes because they're getting carried away by the hypeness. Sam, this is why it's really important for you to be conscious of who's alive with you, so that if you're the only one, like, you've got to make more of an effort not to be too hyped, because it will negatively affect the performance of your teammates.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So you and Josh probably. So, but I know you're a bit higher than Josh. So you're
I have a question about
important in
that.
that scheme of things. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think I operate like my best when like the energy is like that, but I'm not necessarily like a big contributor myself to make the energy like that. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, I haven't heard you being so hyped, but yeah, that makes sense.
Like, so
That means you're
I don't know.
Wait, man, come on.
My bad. How does that like factor into like this kind of thing? Like, because people have different levels of like comms, but they have different like energy of comms, but then they have different like zones of optimal functioning, right? Like if I'm like hyped up, you know, I'm playing super good, right? Because everyone's hype, and I don't know, I'm just playing way better because everyone's hyped up, right? But I can't.
Right.
I'm not really a hype person myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Sounds like you're a passenger on this train. If they're going fast, it's okay.
I gotta carry you, hype wise.
It's that's right, and there's usually someone on a team that's like the designated hype guy, which I always don't really like, because I think everyone has a responsibility to bring the right energy for the team. And also, being a hype guy on a team is not necessarily what's needed by a team. If you've got 5 guys who are down this end, having a hype guy on the team is not going to work. It's going to be detrimental to the team. So you've got to really work out, okay, there might be someone who it's easier for them to bring the energy, and that's fine. But remember, I've said also, in a team of 5, there's a critical mass, and you need to have at least 3 people trying to make the change in order for the change to happen. So if we want to try and raise that energy, we've got to have at least 3 people try to do that by speeding up the comms, or by sounding a little bit more urgent.
Okay.
If we want to try and lower our energy, we want to try and speak a little bit slower, just a touch slower, and sound less urgent, sound a bit more chilled about it.
Okay.
And that's probably the secret. I mean, everyone understands this inverted U stuff and how this is different. I was watching a foreign podcast like in 2020. I think it was toward the end of 2020, and he hit on this idea, and he was talking about how the Swedish teams, you know, the traditional Counter-Strike teams from Sweden, when they were very, very, playing at their best, how calm their comms were, and he was quite surprised at how calm they were, and that's because they were all sort of down here,
Bunch of A's. But
he didn't really expand on, or he didn't know to expand on, okay, well, how do you make a team get to the right energy level? This is why, this is how. It's the energy level, it can be changed by the way you speak to each other. So in comms, if you want to raise the energy, you speak a little bit faster, just a little bit faster, because what happens is that the brain is wired to hear differences. And if you can imagine, like the caveman, if someone's yelling exuberantly there might be a woolly mammoth behind him. And so it's life and death as to whether that person, gets the message out to the rest of the clan to get out of here because there's a woolly mammoth coming.
Mhm.
And so it's really important to have lots of energy to get that across. But where was I going with this, with the woolly mammoth story? The idea is that you need to have that level of hype to, it's an emergency. It's an emergency. Do something. And so everyone's brain is wired to pick up and pay attention if that's happening, if it's a life and death situation. But we're not in caveman times anymore, and so the brain is adapting now. And if you think of like being in a building where there's a fire, if someone's running around like a crazy glute, yelling fire, fire, you're not going to pay a lot of attention to that person because they're not giving good energy, not giving good useful comms. Whereas if you've got someone calmly saying, okay, everybody down the fire escape, take your time, just go down there, be, single file or whatever it is, directive, calm comms, that's what you need in an emergency. That's what the human brain these days is more programmed to. So being hyped up in a pressure situation isn't serving us well.
Okay.
We need to be calming ourselves down a little bit and giving good comms and being directive, and the more useful stuff is what we need at that point.
It's like managing the the calm energy with the situation energy. It's like if the situation is high energy, then you want the comms lower. If the situation is like low energy, you want the comms higher then to like keep that balance.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, and the balance is dependent on what is leading to good performance or not. That's the whole question.
Yeah, and then that's like specific to each team. That makes sense.
Right. Yes. So, but you understand how to raise and lower energy is by sounding urgent. If you need to raise energy, so sounding urgent. It's never about talking loudly, and I also don't like it when teams take up space and comms when they repeat messages. He's over here. He's over here. Go to A. Go to A. Repeating it. It's again a shorthand to the brain saying, okay, there's an urgent situation here, and people are more likely to make mistakes under those circumstances. So you don't want to do that. You want to do things that help your team not make mistakes. And so as soon as and double comms is really contagious in a team. So even though I'm saying just one person's comms are like that, suddenly everyone starts to do it, and just there's no space on comms to hear good information anymore. So you've got to give space to allow good comms to happen. So don't double speak. As soon as you hear it happening, just bite your lip a little bit and just stop it right away as soon as you can.
Yeah.
All right. So anyone got any questions on this sort of idea? Because this is quite novel, I think, in terms of how you actually bring the right energy. You can actually manipulate it by the way you speak. Speaking a bit faster or a bit more urgently makes it more energetic, or speaking slower with less energy that will help you reduce energy level.
Are those the only two ways to adjust that?
I think that's the easiest way. Can you think of any others? This is me thinking from back in 2020, and I haven't really expanded on it too much. But I think this is probably the easiest way to manipulate it.
Volume.
See, I don't really want volume to be a measure.
Could it
again,
be what you're saying?
being louder is not useful.
Is it like
Sorry, say it again, Sam?
What you're saying specifically? You could be like, "Oh, good shit, Andrew." Like that kind of helps raise energy.
Oh, encouragement?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that kind of line.
It's a whole different kettle of fish.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. So this is purely about the way you speak, not what you're saying.
Okay.
Okay.
Because we're trying to tap into our primitive brain because that's our fastest response.
What?
And so it's not about what we're saying; it's about how we're saying it.
What about screaming and grunting?
I don't think that's helpful for performance.
I think that would help me out, actually.
I was just thinking
Yeah, we all know what you mean by that. Sure.
I'm pretty sure if Sam started barking if I got a 2K, the game would be over. I get a million kills if he started barking.
Okay, so I'm talking purely about what's happening in the round. After the round is over, I don't care what you do. you can go nuts, but
I'll
I don't
start
care as
barking.
long as we reset for the next round.
Wait, Andrew, I was gonna
Alright.
ask you too, because you said you're on the lower end, but then we went to
Mhm.
land and yours like, get shit on, kid! Like, just like yelling across the room.
Because our team is like not saying shit, so I gotta
Oh, you're
scream
trying-
for our whole team.
We're
Okay.
nice
You're trying to
guys.
hype everyone up.
Yeah,
Okay.
We're all nice guys, dude. What do you think we are?
I was like the only one screaming.
That reminds me. When we're at a LAN, the energy levels of a LAN are going to be a little bit different because they're, if we think of an energy level in scrims are like low and energy levels of a LAN are much higher,
Yeah.
like automatically because the match is more important. It's very crucial for us to control the energy levels much more so. We want to be more conscious that we automatically want to be more energetic, but we have to be a bit more controlled. Successful teams will control their energy levels a lot more at a LAN than other times because they already know the situation brings enough hype already. So you've got to be really aware. This can really affect teams and their performance if they're not aware of these things.
That makes sense.
So these are all things where how
Right,
you can affect the rest of the team's energy. But then there's just stuff like when people tell you to breathe, to calm down, like just ways you can affect your own energy as well, right? I don't think we've touched on those factors.
I'm getting to that right now.
Gotcha.
So all the stuff I've talked about so far is to do with the team, and now I want to talk more about okay, well, what can you individually do for yourself? So is everyone happy with us moving on from here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait. Should we?
More questions?
So obviously there are environmental factors. Like when you say when we're at land, that's a naturally higher energy environment, and probably when we're playing well or we're winning, that increases the mood as well. So like, I guess are we trying to actively gauge that
I'm
at all
not
times?
talking. Wait, I'm not talking about mood. I'm talking only about energy levels of the comms. So mood is a totally different ball game as well.
Gotcha.
We're just talking about comms itself, right? Not what we're saying, but how we're saying it.
Okay, that's interesting.
There'll be a whole new podcast on mood stuff later.
God,
Yeah, because I've been assuming these things are just intertwined. You change them at the same time. But okay, I
That's
got
how
you.
I thought about it.
Listen.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of them as being totally separate, but they work together.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to the next part. And okay, this one looks a little bit of a doozy.
What the-
And don't be scared. It's a 3-dimensional model now. So let's have a look at the axes. We've got performance on the y-axis, just like we had before. On the x-axis, we've got, instead of arousal level, we've divided it into 2 parts. This one's called physiological arousal, and it's talking about the body symptoms of stress. So that's on the x-axis. And on the z-axis, the one coming out towards us, we've got a different sort of arousal. We've got now cognitive anxiety. So this is now worry is on this axis here. So I'm going to ignore the z-axis for the moment and just talk about the back face of the model. So we're just looking at performance and physiological arousal for the moment. I want you to have a look and see how the back face of the model, so that's the part that's the furthest away from us, follows like a flattened inverted U. Did everyone see that?
Mm-hmm.
So here we're talking about body symptoms of stress. So I want to say, okay, whenever we're getting stressed, and we're in different situations, we will have the same symptoms of stress for ourselves in each situation. So when I'm getting stressed, I get sweaty hands, I get butterflies in my tummy. They're the main stress symptoms for me. But you might have a different range of symptoms. So have you worked out for you, how do you know ahead of time whether you're getting stressed or not? So do you know what your symptoms of stress are?
Yeah.
And if so, tell me what are symptoms of stress. There'll be different ones. Everyone, look, you go ahead. Tell me what you think.
My abs tighten up, my hip floor muscles tighten up, and then also there's like an electric feeling in my chest. That's like how I can tell you.
Okay. Right, and they're the same sort of symptoms for you in different situations,
Yeah,
right?
that's like how I can tell instantly.
Yeah. What about for anyone else?
You get like brain fog when I get really stressed. Like it's harder to think and react really fast to stuff, and I feel really warm in the head.
Hmm?
I
Yep,
feel that same
good.
kind of thing. And then maybe also like some weird stomach, I don't even know how to describe it, pressure. Yeah.
Mhm. Feels a bit knotted in there.
Yeah.
Yep. Who's missing? Trevor, are you gonna have a go?
Sure. I would say probably my like jaw clench. Clench my jaw.
Hmm. Yeah. So tense through here and through the shoulders is really, really common. People might want to pee more or less. They might want to talk more or less. So there's different symptoms for everybody, a whole range of them. And you have to work out, okay, well, what are your symptoms? And the reason behind it is I think of body symptoms of stress a bit like a volcano, where whatever your symptoms are, when the pressure is low, think of the volcano down the bottom here. There's nothing visible at the bottom of the. If you're looking at the volcano, you can't see any action going on. So down here, but as pressure builds, your body symptoms might go bloop 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 up like on top of the volcano, and you might suddenly think, "Oh, I'm aware that some of my body symptoms are affecting me." But you don't want to ignore that, because if the pressure builds even more, the volcano just explodes, and then you've lost, your performance is rubbish. So you've got to try and take some steps. When as soon as you first notice that your body symptoms are sort of, I notice that they're coming up, I must be getting a little bit stressed. That's when you can take some action to sort of like pour cold water on those symptoms so the volcano subsides a bit. So we're going to get to some suggestions as to what those might look like in a little while. But does that picture sort of help everybody understand what's going on? You have to work out, you have to be aware of what your body symptoms of stress are for you, so that you can take action early enough so that you're not being negatively affected performance-wise. Because what we want to have, if you look at the model back again, our best performance is happening at the top of the rainbow here. But notice we will expect to have some body symptoms of stress in the lead up to our best performance. So it's perfectly okay to wake up on the morning of an important competition thinking I'm a little bit nervous, but that's okay, because that's just your body saying, okay, something exciting is going to happen today and you need to be ready for it. So that's what you hope your body will be telling you. And the way for it not to be too overawing for you is to try and turn that nervous energy and say and reframe it and say, okay, excitement. I'm excited about today. Yeah, I'm happy that I've got a chance to compete here and show my skills. So you reframe that negative energy into something positive, which it's not over the top. So performance is not going to be reduced down here. You're just aware of the body symptoms here, and that will help keep you in the zone, a little bit to the left perhaps, or on the top of the inverted U. Right, because if we ignore our body symptoms of stress and they keep continuing to increase, so we're going further along this axis, what happens is our performance will start to drop off. I'll get to the example in a minute, but everyone understands what's going on here because it's really similar to the inverted U stuff we looked at earlier, right?
Yeah.
Everyone happy with that?
Right.
Okay, so if now look at the three-dimensional model with this inclusion of the z-axis, I just want to talk about the top of the model here. So the surface, the performance surface, it's as though, let me just see. I haven't got a piece of paper. I'm not at my normal house, so let's just try this. I've got an envelope. Okay, it's a performance surface. Not a great envelope. All right, so performance surface. It starts out being like an inverted U, with physiological being arousal being at like the back end of the model, closest to me. But as cognitive anxiety comes out towards you, the model buckles. Oops. So it sort of goes in on its. I'm doing it the wrong way around. You have to go this way, don't I? You to see. Okay, so it sort of looks like this. It starts off being like an inverted U shape, but it's got a buckle in it. And the performance surface is just a representation that anywhere on the surface here represents how someone's going to perform. Right, so I'm just going to get rid of that. So if we look here, so far, at a certain point, all looks good with the model. We're sort of okay. It's as arousal levels increasing, performance is still increasing to a certain point. We get to the midpoint, and across the midpoint here at the top of the surface, performance is still okay. It's where we want to be. If we're looking now at this axis, the Z-axis, the worry part, it's talking about how important the match is to us, or our expectations to do with the match. And its expectations are to do with the importance of the match and who our opponent is, whether we think we've got a chance or not. So if we go back to this junction here where all the axes meet, and we're just coming out along the Z-axis, if we think of this being like scrims being here, where they're not very important, let's say they're scrims against a team, we should, we're in a comfortable environment in our own home, we should perform pretty well against this team, so no big deal. Then scrims against a harder team, maybe still in our home environment, we're still okay, but it's a harder team, so performance is, we're getting a little bit more worried. Versus maybe an official, now again in a home, so with no big stress, not too stressful from that point of view, against an easy team. Now an official against a harder team. Now we're at a LAN against an easy team, and maybe LAN in a final. So we're increasing the importance as we're going along the Z-axis here. Is everyone following me along okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
So as the importance increases, what happens to the surface of our model is that it buckles. And at the maximum point, we all start off looking good. So far on this side of the model, it's not too difficult. It gets to the midpoint and we're all okay at this point. But when a match is really super important to us, like our expectations, we want to win so badly, a slight change in physiological arousal, a slight change in arousal levels can make us go over the edge of a cliff from point A down to point B. We go whoop really fast. So remember at the back end up here, our decrease in performance is slow and steady. Here, we've gone off the edge of a cliff and we've had this catastrophic fall from A to B. And it's a bit like in sport. You've seen people choking. So it's where their expectations are too high and they're in a position now they think, okay, I really want to win this match so badly, and maybe they're even in a position to do so. They've been distracted by other stuff, by these expectations that are building up in their own mind, and suddenly performances drop down here, and there's nothing they can do. They're in a form slump now, which probably will last at least a day. It might last longer than a day. I've been with a team that was in a form slump for 6 weeks, and it nearly killed us. And it was only because I had a really great team who debriefed properly, and we could all see we were all trying our best to work out what was going wrong. Actually, it's a really interesting anecdote because this is a Rocket League team. We'd made the major. We'd unexpectedly came fourth in North America, in Rocket League, and in a major. So we were so excited, and immediately after that, our performance dropped right off for 6 weeks. And luckily, it was 6 weeks between majors, and we managed to drag ourselves out and re-perform again well for the next major. But it was 6 weeks of hell, because we all thought that we were doing the right thing, and I thought that there was only like one thing wrong with the team. We kept fixing it. We thought we were fixing it, and it just wasn't working. And do you know that technique I've got where I ask a question and I get you to type into Discord your answers? Have we done that yet? I can't remember if we have done that yet.
The debrief or
yeah, no, well, it's sort of like the debrief, but it's more general than that. Maybe I haven't done this with you guys
I
yet.
don't think so. No.
I don't think so.
No, right. So it's more when there's I'm trying to probe for, what's our best, what's our worst, that sort of situation. I just want to get your own opinions about just general stuff. But anyway, at this point, this is where I came up with this idea of typing in a question and asking, okay, what's going wrong? Or in this case, I think I asked, what's one thing that someone else could do that would be really helpful for you be really helpful for you. And I had the three players type up their answers, and there were three different answers. There was like something going wrong that was different for each of them. And so we fixed those three different things instead of being one thing, fixed three things, and suddenly our form was back again. So it's really very helpful to work out, okay, what's going wrong by typing up a question and getting people to put in there what they think is the answer, because that might spark the fix. And it did. But as I said, 6 weeks, it nearly killed. It would have killed any other team.
Yeah.
Because 6 weeks is a hell of a long time to be in a slump. It was really, really horrible. But I learned a lot out of it. It was very interesting. Anyway, let's go back to our example here. So, yeah, choking is probably the nearest thing in sport where you have this performance drop from A to B, and the form slump can last for some time. So if it happens in the first map, for instance, you may not recover for the second map in time, because everyone's still worrying about what's gone wrong, and they're wanting to fix it, but arousal levels are too high. The worry element is too high, and they can't be fixed at that point. So we want to do everything we can to not go over the cliff. And the way that a lot of sporting teams do it is, instead of being at this high level of cognitive anxiety, like at a LAN, at the most important day of the competition, a final or a grand final, for instance, in sport, you want to try and reduce the importance of the competition in the minds of the players. So if you've ever seen a coach being interviewed on the night before a grand final, or the day of a grand final, everyone wants to know how's the team, what's the inside gossip, tell us how the team is feeling. That's the sort of question that we pose to a coach. How's everyone going? And the standard answer, but it's so true, that a coach will give is, we're treating it like any other match. We're taking it one game at a time, right? And so what the coach is trying to do is to reduce the importance of the occasion, because everyone knows how important the occasion is. We don't need to stress that. But by reducing the importance in the minds of the players to about where this line is in the middle, what happens is that, it all looks the same on the left-hand side of the model here. But if we happen to overthink a little bit or go too far arousal-wise here, the drop-off is really quite small, and you can jump back onto the line again pretty easily, whereas you cannot do that from A to B. The jump is just too big. And so by reducing the importance of the occasion and just doing what you normally do, that's the best anecdote, is that the right word? That's the best way to solve that issue, by treating it like any other match, just doing the best you can. All right, so anyone with any questions on this model, even though it's a bit tricky, have you all followed along okay?
Yeah.
I haven't bored you yet?
No.
That was really
Yeah.
interesting.
Everyone all right?
It just
Okay.
It just like the shape Loki just like popped in my head when you went to that middle line right there at the very end, at the top of the, where you said like it's better to be in the middle.
Yeah.
I don't know. It also just
Right.
made sense right there. The shape just like became
Yeah.
real. I don't know.
Right. It's a really good way to do this talk. So taking you through the history a little bit, because you can see how it all fits together and why
Yeah.
it fits together so nicely. But this model doesn't really tell us an awful lot, other than those sort of generalities that I've spoken about. Reducing, recognizing body symptoms and reducing importance. It doesn't really give us a lot of clues as to what we can do personally yet. And so this is why I like the next one, which is the last one of our theories. It's reversal theory, and it doesn't look at all like anything we've seen before so far. So let me just double check though. Is everyone okay though with moving on from catastrophe theory? Has anyone got any questions?
I did have one question. So
Yep, I'll go back.
it's
Go
like
ahead.
I think it delves a little like far away, but basically like, so basically you want to like reduce the importance of the match to like, you know, like a scrim or whatever. But there's like people who would, like, for example, we had an old teammate, his name is Nico, and went to a LAN tournament. And before like we started our first match on the LAN, he wanted to do like a huddle, which is like completely like out of the ordinary from what we would normally do. Wouldn't that like kind of thing like raise the importance in our heads of the match?
It can do. I'm not a big fan of huddles,
Yeah.
but I've had my mind changed a little bit because what it can do is bring together the team as a group. And
Yeah.
I think that's the benefit of it.
Yeah.
A huddle doesn't have to be hyped and
Yeah.
high energy. A huddle can actually be low energy. It can
Mm.
just be reminding people. I don't want to get into your talk, Sam, that you were going to the hype talk you want to give.
Oh.
but you know, any pre-game talks are probably going to be of the same format where you're reminding people of, you know, the journey they've been on, that you just need to do whatever you do normally. You don't need to be Superman. You know, just if we all do our jobs properly and speak to each other properly, the outcome will look after itself. And those sort of reminders before a game are perfectly fine. A huddle is okay if you're doing it for that purpose, to bring everyone together and get everyone on the same page. But if you're thinking of a huddle where everyone's jumping around and being wild people and you know, bringing lots of energy, I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, I just like, I know there's like different kinds of huddles and stuff. I just mean like literally like the presence of a huddle or like a pre-match talk.
Yeah, doing something different.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
exactly.
understand.
So like, wouldn't you want to bring that into like even like scrims? Like just have like, you know, 2 or 3 minute like talk before a scrim, just to make it like.
Oh, so it
more
doesn't
of a-
stand
You
out as
wouldn't. You
much.
wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I see
Yeah,
what
you
you're
More of
wouldn't.
like a rehearsed thing.
You probably wouldn't in a scrim, of course.
Well,
But
I mean,
if it's an official, you might have a pre-game match like address like that.
ChatGPT.
That's fine.
yeah. I mean,
But
like, I'm just
you
thinking,
need to
like,
watch
you
the
can
energy
bring it-
levels.
You can bring it into scrims by like doing like,
Right.
talking about like what you're gonna practice or whatever, and then that can translate
Yeah.
as well to a match, like talking about
Sure.
how you're gonna play the
Absolutely.
match.
Absolutely.
And I think, yeah,
Yeah. Even reminder of goals is always a good idea.
so I think like
Right.
that kind of format could be beneficial. Yeah, that's all. I have.
Yeah. Good
Oh,
point.
just so you're aware,
Anyone else?
Trevor just left. I think he said he had to go at like 9ish.
Yeah.
Okay. No worries.
Yeah, he had to go.
No worries. Lucky you're recording it then.
Yeah.
All right. Everyone happy with it now? Is everyone okay?
Wait, so then should I give that speech still? The ChatGPT one?
No.
No?
No. Keep the powder dry still.
Oh, wait, what do you mean? Don't do it at all? Like the playoffs match?
No, not yet. Not yet. Oh, yeah. No, I think it's okay, but let's not do it like 5 minutes before we start. We should do it like 15 minutes before we start. For
Okay.
instance. Because the people who would like to be a bit calmer, as you'll see in the next slide, people who like to be a bit calmer will need to have a little bit of time to wind down from that.
Okay. I think it was more like,
Right.
it wasn't that hype. I think it was more like corny. It would be like a good like joke.
Right.
Because I
Okay,
don't know,
good.
it was kind of cringe, like the speech
right.
that came up.
All right.
But I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll all have a good laugh. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
In that case, yeah, 5 minutes beforehand is fine. You have a look at it now in light of energy, you'll see, okay, this is clearly going to be okay, or maybe I'll do it a little bit earlier than later.
Yeah, I'll see how everyone's feeling. If everyone's quiet beforehand, then I'll bust it out. If not, then I don't
Right. I look forward to it.
know.
Excellent. All right. Okay. Let's have a look now at the next one. Okay. This is reversal theory. And this was developed by a guy called Michael Apter, and his background is in health psychology. So he was interested to look and see how to get people to take their medication, stop doing unhealthy behaviors and start doing healthy behaviors. And it was hijacked by a mate of mine, John Kerr, who used it for sports psychology and said, okay, he's going to pop this line in here and said, players who are above this line perform better than players who are below this line. So let's have a look at this theory here. On the y-axis, we no longer have performance. We've got something called hedonic tone. And so I don't know if you've ever heard of the word hedonism. It's an unusual word.
Yeah.
It's Greek. Yeah. And it's talking about living a life of pleasure. So what do you find to be pleasant? So hedonic tone is talking about, okay, a low score is something you find unpleasant, and a high score is something you find pleasant. Michael Apter was the guy who devised this theory himself, and he used a whole lot of Greek terms. And I think it's quite off-putting to a lot of people using Greek terms, unless you're Greek, I suppose. But for non-Greeks, having a theory with a lot of Greek terms is a little bit off-putting in some ways. But we'll have a go at it anyway. So yeah, hedonic tone is on the y-axis. On the x-axis, we've got our mate arousal levels again. So this is quite similar to what we've had before. And what he's saying is that there are two types of people. He's divided them into two, and he's called one group telic and one group paratelic. Now, before we get into this, I just want to talk about another concept which is really similar to this, not related exactly, but it's similar, of extroverts and introverts. So extroverts are people who get energized by being around other people. And it's not to say that they can't be alone, because they can, but afterwards they would need to be energized by being around other people again. And introverts are people who get energized by being away from other people. And it's not to say they can't go to a party and have a great time, because they can, but afterwards they would need to withdraw and have some time alone for them to recharge. And you think of it like a battery running down. So paratelics like to have lots and lots of energy, and they get run down by being away from that energy. And telics prefer to be away from people, and their battery gets run down by being with other people. So if we plotted everybody out on extroversion and introversion, it would look like a normal curve where there's a few people at either end, like introverts at one end and extroverts at the other end. But the majority of people are in the middle, and they're a little bit flexible. So remember, the majority of people in the normal curve, that's where most people are going to be, and they're flexible. It means they don't have to be either introverts or extroverts. They're sort of somewhere in between, and they're quite happy to cope either way. But the more extreme you are, the more you need it to be that way for your best performance. But we're not talking about introverts and extroverts. We're talking about paratelic and telic now. But I'm raising it because it's if we graph them again on a normal curve, it would look similar. We've got extremes at either end, and majority in the middle are sort of somewhat flexible. Now let's look at the Greek term here. So telic in Greek is goal-oriented, and what they're saying is, for a goal-oriented person, we follow the blue line, under low levels of arousal, they find this to be a pleasant state, so they're performing when they're relaxed. But as arousal levels increase, this blue line decreases down here, and they become, under high levels of arousal, they become anxious and unable to perform at their best. Everyone follow that okay?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Paratelic, para meaning other than, so other than telic is excitement seeking. This is my red dashed line here. And so under low levels of arousal, a paratelic person will find this to be an unpleasant state. They're bored because there's nothing much happening for them. And as arousal levels increase, what happens is that they become more excited, and they perform at their best because they're now above this dotted line, according to Kerr. So a paratelic wants to perform best when they're excited, and a telic person wants to perform at their best when they're relaxed. So it makes sense so far, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the question I know you on the tip of your tongues is, how do I work out whether I'm a telic person or a paratelic person? Do you have some sort of idea? So it's very similar in concept to what we've seen already with those inverted U's. working out whether you're a high energy person or a low energy person. Same sort of concept there. So that will give you a clue. Do you agree with Sam? You and Josh are probably more tending to be paratelics probably, and probably everyone else is going to be either telic or somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah,
Does that fit with everyone's idea?
I think so.
The way I used to be a university lecturer, so my example comes from that. So if I gave you an assignment to do at university, and I said, okay, you've got a month to do it in, a telic person would get it done early and then chill for the next couple of weeks and then just hand it in. That's how they're quite relaxed about doing it. They'd rather tick it off and get it done and then have fun. Whereas a paratelic person is someone who's going to party up until the last night and hand it in the deadline.
Go crazy
That's how I describe it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, if you worked out, again, a lot of us are the majority of people are going to be in the middle somewhere. So, if you think of that normal curve, most people are going to be in the middle. Some people are going to be at either end. I don't think we've truly got a lot. I think I'm the most telic out of everybody. So, I think I'm going to be at one end more than everyone else. But what's I going to go with? I can't remember now. We'll keep moving on. All right. So yeah, we've got that idea. So I want to explain both ways, both paratelic and telic ways, because remember I said most people are in the middle and they're flexible. It's very important for the flexible people to understand, okay, well, how do I raise my energy level and how do I lower my energy level myself? And the easiest way to do it, are you able to see this writing down the bottom clearly enough?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do I need to make that a bit bigger?
It looks good on my
Make
screen.
it a little bit bigger.
I can redo it.
Oh, good. Okay. Oops. Okay, so the way we can do it easily enough is by manipulating heart rate. And so for a paratelic person who's bored, we want to follow this arrow here, this one that's going from left to right. We want to increase their heart rate. We want to increase arousal levels to drag them from being bored to excited. So the way we do this is by breathing harder and shallower, or by doing exercise, or by having music with a louder, faster beat.
Hard style.
So let's have a look at these things one at a time. So breathing harder and shallower. So remember, I'm saying remember to you, but yeah, I don't think I've spoken to you about it. So when you're trying to do breathing for relaxation, let's just think about this for a minute. I want you to put one hand on your chest and one hand, your other hand about, so your little finger is where your belly button is. Okay, got two hands on your body?
Yes.
Okay, so where the top hand is to about where your forefinger is of the lower hand, that's about the size of your lungs in your body, and so they're quite large organs. And when we're trying to relax ourselves, we want to try and take deep breaths so that our lower hand moves away slightly from our spine, because what's happening is our lungs are filling up and it's pushing out our intestines and stomach a little bit away from our spine as the lungs fill up. So our lower hand should just move slightly away from our spine. So let's try that now. So breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Now, did you notice your lower hand moves away slightly from your spine?
Yes.
Everyone happy with that? They could do that?
Yeah.
So that's what we need. That movement away from our spine is what we need to show that we've got really inflated lungs. We want to maximize our oxygen in our bloodstream, and should explain this a little bit later, but never mind. There's a strong brain and heart rate connection, a biofeedback loop that works on the brain working. Okay, have I got enough oxygen in my blood or not? If I need to have more oxygen, I need to breathe deeper, get more oxygen in, and I'll be able to think calmer when that happens. But if we want to do the opposite, so most of us are really lazy. I know I am. And we just use the top part of our lungs for talking and our everyday stuff. We don't usually fill our lungs all the way to the bottom, right? I know I'm really lazy. So if we're wanting to increase our heart rate, have less oxygen in our blood, what we need to do is just like panting. And it will stress our heart by not having enough oxygen in our blood. And the brain says, hey, I'm feeling stressed about not having enough oxygen. I need my heart to beat faster to get more oxygen happening. So when our heart rate increases, our brain says, oh, okay, thank you. I'm starting to feel more excited. So the brain is interpreting that as excitement now because it wants to put a meaning to the heart rate. Remember thinking of the woolly mammoth chasing our caveman? Bit of exercise there. There's danger or excitement or something's about to happen. I need to pay attention. And so the brain is saying to the heart rate, okay, I understand what's going on here. I need to be excited here to make something happen. Everyone following along okay? Have I made my caveman example too hard?
No, that's good. That's good.
No, I got it.
All good? Okay, so for our paratelic, we want to increase our heart rate by breathing shallower. One way to do it. You don't want to do a whole lot of it because you don't want to pass out. So only a few breaths is all you need to stress the heart, and you just need this initial, like think as a priming the pump. So just get your heart rate started, or you can do exercise. Now I have a lot of players who, between maps, will do like push-ups, 10 push-ups, because between maps, if they think they need to raise their own energy level. Increasing their heart rate that way makes them more switched on. They're more able to pay attention.
We're doing some dual jumping jacks, Sam.
Yeah, jumping jacks, exactly.
Push-up competition.
I have lots and lots of players who do this all the time, but it works. It only will work for paratelics.
Yeah,
I'll tell you about that in a minute.
That makes sense because when I was cutting weight, like it's like a couple months ago, I would like walk and like jog around my basement between matches just to get like more steps and stuff.
Right.
And I noticed that like when I'd have like long sessions of practice, like that jog, like it was like for cutting weight mostly, but then like I'd sit back down and like I was just on it like the next game. Like I just felt like so fresh, like just the jogs between matches. So it makes sense because I would assume I'm like more paratelic than average.
Correct. And so that tweet I showed you today was a paper talking about how the researchers are thinking about recommending for everybody to do this exercise, and I'm saying no, don't make it a recommendation for everyone because that will not be good for the telics. It's only useful for paratelics. Okay. Okay. The alternative to exercise would be, again, you don't need to do a whole lot. It only needs to be enough to get your heart rate up a little bit more for the brain to say, okay, I'm switched on now. And as I said, it's like the woolly mammoth being behind you. The brain is okay. I'm paying attention now. Something's going to happen here. I'm ready for it.
Yeah,
is how the focus works. The alternative is to have music with a louder, faster beat. Now, I talk to my traditional athletes as well as my esports athletes. I tell them that they should have two playlists, one of fast beat music and one of slow beat music. And so my fast beat music, we want to have 100 beats a minute or more, like 120 even beats a minute or more. If you've got a collection of favorite tunes that you like, songs that you like, and you put in Google the name of the song and put BPM with a question mark or something like that, if you put BPM afterwards, Google will tell you what the beats per minute is. So we're looking more than 100 is music with a louder, faster beat.
That Russian EDM.
And I would get a playlist of about 10 or 12 songs at least that would constitute your fast beat music.
Okay.
And the reason why it works is because your heart rate takes on the beat of the music, so it mimics that. So if you've got a collection of songs like that, which is fast, then that will get you into the right frame of mind for those. So that will lift you from being, if you're someone who needs to be raising your energy levels, then you'll be more likely to be up here and be able to compete well because you're above this dotted line here.
Change up that Halo music sound.
Yes. You get the hype ones.
Okay.
Yo, Halo can do for both because
if
there's
I,
like slow and sad, and then there's the hype ones. You do.
Right. So when I talk to athletes and I say, "Have you got a playlist of music you like?" They say, "Yeah." But when I look at it, it's usually interspersed with 2 different types. I want you to have 2 different playlists: one of fast beat and one of slow beat, and you would pick which one you wanted to listen to.
Which one you need.
On this is important too. Yeah. So this is where I show my puppet hand. So this hand represents how much energy you need to bring to the event. Because events have different energies. So scrims have this much energy and officials have this much energy. So wherever you're at, this hand represents, okay, well, where am I right now? So if I'm down here and I want to raise myself to meet the energy level I need, I've got to increase my energy level. Or if I work out I'm here, I need to reduce my energy level. So I need to reduce my heart rate. So I have to work out, okay, what's the energy level of the event? And where am I right now?
So then what? We'd have to get hype for scrims and then get chill for matches, pretty much.
Well, I guess
because like the matches are like
nutshell.
inherently more exciting.
Right. You do want to try and simulate matches as much as possible, but the proviso there is when you're learning new stuff, it's better to do it calm first. And as you practice and get better at it, then you can afford to be a bit more hyped for that.
Okay.
When you're learning new stuff, you need to be a bit calmer.
Yeah.
There's always all these little provisos, aren't there? Anyway, so is everyone happy with our paratelic example here? So moving from left to right on this model.
Yeah, it makes sense.
For our telic one, we want to go from right to left. We want to reduce our heart rate. Reduce our energy to be relaxed because that's where we perform at our best, according to Kurt. And so reducing our heart rate is we want to breathe deeply, slowly. So remember I had 2 hands on our body. We want to take 3 deep breaths. 3 deep breaths is our go-to method to calm ourselves down. If ever we need to be calm, and you want that as an outcome, then 3 deep breaths is the easiest one to do of any of them. So remember, we want to make it so that our lower hand is away from our spine slightly. We want to go breathe in through our nose for 4 and out through our mouth for 6. We want our outward breath to be slightly longer than our inward breath. It's just more relaxing that way. So in for 4, out for 6. So into the nose, the receptors that are in the nose and back of the mouth, the brain is interpreting these, it's expecting to get it in that way. If you breathe totally through your nose or totally through your mouth, it works, but it's not quite as effective that way. But so in through the nose, out through the mouth is the most effective way. In for 4, out for 6. All right, so breathing deeply, slowly, 3 deep breaths. You don't have to have your hands on your body as long as you realize that you're taking deep enough breaths, getting all that oxygen in. That will help you make good decisions, make you feel more relaxed. You would avoid exercise close to the start of the event if you're a telic person, and that's why a blanket suggestion for everyone to do push-ups before a match, that would be totally detrimental to telic, so don't do that. If anything that raises the heart rate, like if you were giving a very stirring speech as the IGL, Sam, you wouldn't do that right at the start of the event because for a telic person that wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
They would need some thinking time between that happening so they can unwind themselves a little bit.
What if Andrew gives consent,
person,
though? Are we good?
I would still...
If he closes his ears.
I would still do it earlier. This is why in sporting groups, coaches don't normally give their... In the old days, they used to give their pep talk as the teams were walking out. And in those days, some of the guys who go out onto the ground to play, they were totally unfocused because they were
too excited.
They were too hyped up. Yeah. And so many mistakes happen. But now coaches have worked out, okay, let's do the talk maybe an hour ahead before the grand final, and then everyone else can just hype themselves up either individually themselves if they're paratelic or keep themselves calm if they're telic. And so often if you've seen a grand final, if there's cameras in the rooms, like we get them at our AFL grand final, cameras in the rooms, you see some players who are sort of punching a punching bag or maybe bashing into each other to raise the aggression levels to increase the hype for them. That works. They're the paratelic people. You get some people who are just chatting amongst themselves, and they're the sort of mixed in between. They're okay for themselves. And you get some people who are sitting in a corner with a towel over their head, just thinking.
Yeah.
And they're the telic people.
It's in the zone.
Yeah, you do whatever is right for you to get yourself in the right frame of mind.
Bro, Andrew.
But you have to know what works for you.
Yeah.
What do you think take flight is? You think they're all paratelic? you ever hear their comms when we're at the Dallas land?
A little bit, yeah. There are definitely a lot of paratelic people.
Dude, it was just all hype. Just mid around, like freeze time. It's like, let's fucking go, let's fucking get, like, just everyone's just hype.
Look at this shit.
Yeah.
Was it good for performance for them, or were
I
they doing
think
it
so. They
I
placed
guess so.
second.
knowing
Yeah.
how good it was?
Yep.
Okay, well, that's
So,
okay.
I think
Maybe
they're just
they
all
know that works for
paratelics.
them. That's
Yeah.
fine. Quite possibly. Okay, and culturally too, there'll be differences between teams. As I said, the Swedish CS team from the mid-teens were very, very calm culturally. That's probably a reason why.
Mhm.
Asian teams tend to be a little bit less hyped as well. So there's cultural differences as well you've got to take into account. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's move on. So, yeah, we're talking about decreasing our heart rate by breathing slowly, avoiding exercise close to the start of the event. We've spoken about that. So if you're someone who likes to go to the gym and then you've got an official coming up, maybe go to the gym in the morning and do the official in the afternoon, for instance. If you've got that sort of a break, that's still okay. And then you'd have that playlist of softer, slower beat music. So now we want our heart rate to be lower. So 60 beats a minute or less is what you need for slow beat music. So we've got our fast beat music, we've got our slow beat music, and we listen to whichever one we need to have to raise or lower our energy levels to meet the challenge of the event. So they're the things we can do physiologically just by manipulating heart rate. Anyone got any questions?
What was the beat per minute you said?
Yeah,
for the...
60, less than 60.
60 or less?
60,
Okay.
60. Yeah. I'll give you a piece of paper that tells you all this stuff.
I'm
don't
already
worry.
taking notes, don't worry.
Yeah, same.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so anyone got any questions on this part so far?
I have a comment. This all seems really similar because I've been taking like a course on like anxiety and DPDR, and the guy talks about like the
Right.
sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic, and it's like
Right.
everything you're saying. It seems like it's pretty much the same thing, but like what, like he was saying that the sympathetic is like used for gearing up, like activation, like energy and stuff.
Fight or flight.
Yeah, your fight. Yeah, it gears up like your fight or flight and stuff, and then your parasympathetic nervous system like is responsible for like slowing that down and like decreasing the energy. And then he was talking about like deep breaths, like activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And there's like other things he was saying
Right.
too, like widening your field of vision, I guess, also activates the parasympathetic, so that could help with someone who's like telic. And then there's like the
Yep.
progressive muscle relaxation too, I guess, helps as well. And then like there's some other things. I think like walking too, like forward movements, like signals to your brain that
Okay.
you're like walking away from a threat, and like I guess that helps as well. I don't know, it's pretty interesting. It's just like
Right.
it just reminded me of that.
Right. Yeah, cool. All right. Any other comments on the physiological stuff we've spoken about? So,
No, I'm good.
No, that's all good.
right, okay. So we got three examples of things we can do for each type. But I want to talk now about the reversal part because we haven't spoken about why it's got its name here. So it's possible to reverse from being bored to relaxed. So a paratelic person can be telic, and a telic person can be paratelic by going from anxious to excited for a short period of time. And you do this at the start of an event and hope that the event sort of carries you through. Now, it sounds a bit odd, but if we think of, this way of arousal, changing arousal levels is the physiological way to deal with it. Thinking back on our catastrophe model, like the back wall of the model was talking about physiological ways. Remember, the z-axis was a cognitive way, a thinking way. And so this thinking way, changing from anxious to excited or bored to relaxed, is part of reversal theory. And this is why it's most interesting. Let's look at our examples. I'm going to give you two examples of people who you've never met, probably, never heard of before, but that's okay. You'll understand what I'm talking about. I want to talk about a tennis player in Australia called Leighton Hewitt. He's currently the manager of Tennis Australia's overseas teams. When they go overseas, he's the manager. He's a very excellent player. He's won, I think, 2 majors. I'm not a big tennis fan, but he's won 2 majors, I'm pretty sure. But he was, because he's a lot younger than I am. I remember him when he was a young guy. I was working with Tennis Australia at the time, and he was a young guy coming through. And he was like 12, 13, 14, young prodigy, just so talented. His family got him started quite young, so he's very, very talented relative to everybody else. And he would often go into matches being bored because he knew he was so much better than everyone else. I'm making these assumptions. I don't know him as well. I've never worked with him. So he would look as though he was quite bored. And often players, you've noticed that they allow their opponent to get a little bit ahead because they need that spur to make them suddenly switch on. Have you noticed that in some sports that some people let their opponent get a little bit ahead and now they can finally start playing well? And he was a bit like that. But sometimes instead of letting them get ahead, if they weren't going to get ahead, he would need to do something else. And what he did often was he would pick a fight with the linesman or the ball boy or his opponent or the umpire because he needed to feel it was me versus them. Gives him the same feeling of, I've got to win this now because I feel slighted or I feel misrepresented or something. So he would win his matches, but he was universally hated by the public because it was done in such an unsportsmanlike way, like picking a fight with someone else. Aussies love a winner, but they want a sportsmanlike win. So when he was about 18 or so, he changed. He came up with this idea. I don't know whether it was him or who suggested it. He came up with this idea of this fist pump saying, come on, to himself. And that was the trigger for him. He used that like as a keyword or key image for him to really focus and sharpen up. And he would use that to kick himself into suddenly become more excited and play well. It was something that was in his control, so it was good for him from that point of view. It was socially acceptable, so the crowd loved him. And with the crowd on side, suddenly he became really popular and he won even more matches as a result. So for him, he was able to work out what he could do to bring about that change, to make himself from bored to excited. But that's how he would change his heart rate. If he was changing it using thinking instead and go from bored to relaxed, what he could do is, like, if you think of tennis being broken into parts where it's got points, sets, games and matches as being like the arbiter of, how you measure performance. If we broke it into its smallest component, points is the smallest component here. And so if he went in there and changed his thinking and said, okay, I think I'm a much better player than this person, but I'm going to set myself a mini challenge instead, and what I want to try and do is win 3 points in a row, and then 3 points in a row, and 3 points in a row, and string them all together. So now he's got a challenge rather than being like winning the whole match as being the outcome. He's got like little mini challenges along the way that suddenly keeps him interested, and now he's able to play. He knows he's so much better than his opponent, but he's relaxed because he knows he can win easily, but he's got a challenge now, and he likes having a challenge. So he's reversed from being paratelic to telic by changing his thinking. Everyone okay with that?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yes.
I want to talk about a telic example now. I used to be a 400-meter hurdler in another body size in another lifetime, and I was against. No, I was never against him because he's a fellow. I was the same era, but a little bit younger than me. Was a sprinter called Matt Shervington. He comes from a different state to me. He was a very brilliant sprinter, and he would compete against people. Like sprinting is quite a small fraternity in Australia, especially. So he would know all his competitors. He would know how well they ran. He knows all the venues. There's not that many venues around Australia. He would know everything, about the situation quite well, and he would be quite relaxed. He knows he's a better sprinter than everyone else, so he would often win his sprints, and as a result of that, being relaxed and sprinting really well, he would get selected for Olympic Games and Commonwealth Games quite easily because he was a great sprinter. But when they come out to the Olympic Games, you know how they sort of pan the cameras across to the competitors and they announce them and give a bit of a wave to the crowd. When it came onto Matt Shervington's face, he was like white as a ghost, like he was about to throw up on the line. He was clearly very, very anxious, and he never ever reproduced his good form that he was able to do when he was more relaxed. His performance was always much worse when he was looking on either side of him, the other 7 athletes, thinking, they're all really good sprinters, I'm not sure I can win. And he's talked himself out of it almost before he starts. So for him, he would not compete when he would not compete well when he's anxious. What he could do is either change his heart rate here. That's one way, but it's not the best way. I think the best way of all is to change thinking. And the way he could do it is, again, like Leighton Hewitt did, break the event into parts. So for a 100-meter sprint, you work out, okay, what's the smallest parts that make the most sense? The parts that are important are responding to the gun, coming out of the block smoothly, relaxing through the middle part of the race, and throwing at the line. And if he did those 4 skills to the best of his ability, he'd be right up there with everybody else. No question about it. So if he changed his thinking to do the things that he can control, the best of his ability, that would be enough. And if it's not enough, that's okay. That means he's being beaten by a better sprinter, but at least he's not so anxious that he can't perform well. He's given himself every chance. And so it's the same thing for us. If we're against a better, or if we're in an important competition, I think the best way for us to think about it is to change our thinking and say, okay, well, let's not get overawed by the importance of the event or who we're up against. It's irrelevant. What we need to do is do things that we know we do really well, do them to the best of our ability. That includes our comms and our shooting and our teamwork, just everything. If we do them to the best of our ability, we've done all we can. We've given it our best shot. We might have been beaten by a better team, but we've given it our best shot. We've been mentally tough and done it the right way. So I think this change in thinking is probably by far the best way to approach an important competition. And then if we find ourselves in the competition, like this is, I'm talking about the lead up to the competition, we change our thinking and make sure we're doing things in our control. In the middle of the competition, we might do some of this heart rate stuff that will put cherry on the top for us that makes most sense, depending on whether we're telic or paratelic. But I think the best lever we can pull that will help our performance is to make sure we're all thinking about the things that we can control round by round that will help us win round by round. And then they just get strung together and the outcome looks after itself.
Makes sense.
That's the end of my TED talk.
Oh, really?
We all happy with that?
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
That was good.
I really like that. So, I mean, it seems like they
makes sense,
all,
right?
for the most part, it seems like they're all like pretty much talking about the same thing, right? It's just like maintaining that balance of like, energy. It's just like it gets it more specific with each diagram.
Well, see, no one really strings it together like I do.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of experience doing this. This is my PhD topic, so I know it really well.
Shoot. Okay.
And so this has been put together on purpose to show people, okay, this is where it's coming from. This is why it's happening, and here's what you can do about it.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's been made clear to you, and you've really enjoyed it.
That was really interesting.
With the reversal theory, this kind of thing, like the change of thinking, is that something that can also like inadvertently, like subconsciously happen, you know, like without you intentionally wanting to change your thinking? Does that make sense? Like, like maybe you're like, paratelic, but if you're like, you get a change of thinking because you start playing against like a lot better opponents, and then you're like anxious, right? But you're like really bored if you're playing against like bad opponents, right?
Right.
Does that make sense? Like you kind of change your thinking.
I think if you've managed to do that without realizing it, that's amazing, because I think most people wouldn't be able to do that without lots and lots and lots of trial and error.
I mean it in like a bad way.
Oh, okay.
Like you do it not for a way that benefits you. You know what I mean? Like.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you've got to be really strategic, haven't you? This way encourages you to do things on purpose that will lead you to good performance. Well, that's the way I think of it anyway.
Okay.
But I want you to notice that for both telics and paratelics, the change in thinking is the important part, and that's appropriate for everybody. You see that? I want that to be really clear, that we all need to pay attention to the things that we can control that win us round by round, or do things to the best of our ability round by round, because that's the main lever that we can pull to improve our performance. And then the little tweaking bit is here for us individually as to what we need to do. But as a team and as a person, if we're just paying attention to the things that we can control, that's going to be the best thing for us to do.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I do have one little bit here that it's probably too small to read here. I'll get it to you later. But how to view your opponent to maximize your performance. So a telic person plays at their best when they're calm. And so the way that you might approach this, if you're a telic person, if you perform your best without all the hype, your focus should be on the way you play and less about your opponent, because you don't want to be stressed by them. You want to be thinking about the things that you can control. Telics play better and respond better to facts and information, not emotion. You should view your opponent as someone who actually is a partner. So then, again, they're not quite so scary. They're there to show you what you know or what you don't yet know. I think Sam and I spoke about this on our podcast last time.
Yep.
How you view your opponent as a partner with you. So competition is a way for you to work out what parts of your game aren't working well yet, so your opponent is actually complicit in and necessary for your success. And the person who has the most control over your ability and whether you'll find success is you. So your efforts are best spent making sure you play your best round by round and shot by shot. So that's for a telic person. That's the way they think of it in terms of an intellectual level. That's how they would calm themselves down and play their best. But for a paratelic, they play best when they're excited. So they enjoy the hype. They find it maybe beneficial to create an imaginary me versus them type scenario. I've heard a lot of players say, if they want to think and say in their head, you're shit. you like, I'm so much better than them. Does that ring true for you, Sam, as someone as representing the paratelics in the world? Do you think that way?
Sometimes I try not to, though, because it kind of messes me up in the long term. Because then if I'm like, oh, they're shit, and then they beat me that round, I'm like, oh, I just lost to someone who's shit, so I'm shit.
I must be. That's right. It must be
so
worse.
I try to avoid that.
Right. I think that's a good reason to avoid it, and so I don't like it for that reason too.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of players like to use that as a way they do it. So paratelics tend to play better and respond better to emotion. And if you think of the ways that you deserve to win because you think you're superior to them, which may or may not be true, but if you believe it is, then that will be a productive thought process. And again, breaking the event into parts, using opportunity to express domination of your opponent. That sort of thinking is how a paratelic person might get more out of themselves. And I don't know whether you get the sound when I play this. It doesn't matter if you don't.
Hey, getting it in.
So they're just showing different ways of warming up appropriately, but this is clearly a paratelic example.
Yeah.
Someone using push-ups to try and raise their heart rate. But
gonna
yeah,
hit
that's
that
all I
at
have for you
land.
today.
Okay. Hell yeah. All right, so
Then
then
we start boxing.
so then for the playoffs match, I just give the speech to Josh. It's just me and him go to a different channel. We get hyped up and then we just come back like, "What's up? What's
I
up,
don't
guys?"
know. We should hear a couple of them in practice first to see which one's a good one.
Yeah, true.
We'll be the judge of that.
Man, that was good though. I really like that. That whole that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a huge talk, isn't it? It's a real ripper, and it's the one
Yeah.
I give to all my teams the first time because it spells out really. It's useful for everybody to understand. Okay, what's my role here? How do I bring the right energy for me and for my team, and be
Yeah.
conscious of that? Just so important.
Yeah, when you talk about paratelecs, how they like to talk shit, that just instantly made me think about Josh, man. I think we're in a scrim, and he killed some guy with like no armor. It was like 1 HP with a deagle, and he was like shitter. He was like last alive too. It's like, bro, of course he's gonna lose.
Yep.
Just like shit
I
talk.
understand.
It instantly made me think about it. Man. But yeah, that
Very
was
good.
interesting. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.